All right, guys, we're back in my garage for another video, and a lot of you guys ask me about picking the best downpipe. The main question a lot of you ask is which one should you go with, a 4.5 inch or a 5-inch downpipe? And there are a lot of different options out there, and so I try to give my feedback, but I realized I've actually tried both. I have had a 4.5 inch VRSF downpipe, a 4.5 inch Bimmer Network downpipe, and also a 5-inch Race Ready Performance downpipe, which don't ask me what happened to them. I really don't know, but there are a bunch of different 5-inch options out there as well. So I thought I would try to give my personal thoughts on my experience running the different downpipes, as far as if there are any gains, sound differences, and also, of course, why you might want to go one way or the other, just strictly from a technical standpoint. So let's go ahead and talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this video useful.
Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future.
So just to baseline everything, I want to take a couple measurements. So let's hop over to some components on the car and see how everything actually stacks up when we put some calipers to different exhaust components. All right, so here we've got the stock downpipe, and let's go ahead and take a couple measurements. So the first thing we'll do is look at the downpipe inlet. So obviously this mates up to the stock turbo, so this will tell us how big the stock turbo outlet or the stock turbo opening is. So let's open this all up. Again, this is just for a point of reference. So we're just going to put my calipers in here and try to find the biggest part of this opening. And wow, that's over 4 inches, almost 4.5 inches. Are you serious? So measuring a little bit inside, as you can see, there's kind of like a lip right here. Let's see, flash. There we go. So you can see there's kind of a lip right here. So the inside of that lip is around 4.2 inches. I can change it to millimeters. So 10.6 centimeters, 106 millimeters for my guys across the pond. And then if you're measuring this part of it, it's 4.5 inches. So that's crazy. I really didn't realize it was that big, but I guess that's what we've got. So starting off, we've got over a 4-inch outlet coming out of the stock turbo. Now, looking at the outlet of the exhaust, let's see how big this is, because I think it's much smaller. That is, yeah, like 3 inches. I think I've seen 3.1 inches for most of the mid-pipe sizing, so that makes sense. Again, my calipers and just hand measurements aren't going to be perfect, but yeah, about 3 inches there. And then I think the other thing I want to measure is the size of this cat. Basically, the biggest section on here, I don't even think I can measure it all the way. I can't get my caliper all the way on it, but over 5 inches. So that's probably close to like 5.2 or 5.3 inches around the downpipe, maybe even almost 5.5 inches. So beefy boy, but it goes from a little over 4 inches, like 4.2 inches, up to 5 inches for the stock catalytic converter, and then back down to about 3.1 inches for the mid-pipe connection. Now, just because I'm curious, we're going to try to see the size of the exhaust housing on my EFR top mount turbo. I know this isn't going to be perfect, and they've got dimensions on their website, but I'm going to measure it. So let's see. I think we've got this on there pretty good. Survey says 3.5 inches. Yeah, that sounds about right. So stock turbo outlet is actually bigger than this big top mount beefy boy. So after going through those numbers, I feel like it makes things almost a little more confusing than they were before. I mean, for one, who realized the stock turbo outlet was so big? Over 4 inches for a stock turbo is pretty large, especially if you're like me and you come from other platforms. Usually the aftermarket exhausts are 3-inch, maybe 3.5-inch in order to get a little more gains out of it. So I was really surprised to see such big downpipe options from our B58 engines to begin with. But after measuring the inlet of the stock downpipe and measuring the stock turbo outlet, you realize it's not that much bigger than what we already get from the factory. Then it's also kind of weird to see that an upgraded turbo that's rated for, 700 plus horsepower has a smaller downpipe opening than the stock turbo. And even if you look at other turbo companies like Precision Turbo or Garrett Turbo, a lot of these guys also have upgraded turbos, even ones that are rated for over 1,000 horsepower, and the downpipe outlet is 3.5 inches. So that's of course surprising as well, considering the stock turbo needs such a big opening, apparently from the OEM standpoint. And then the other thing is that all of these downpipes taper down to the same 3-inch or 3.1-inch outlet. And that is by design because everything is designed to mate up to a stock component. So if you've got an upgraded downpipe but a stock catback, or an upgraded catback but a stock downpipe, they're all going to meet at that same joint. So they all need to have the same diameter at that connection. So what actually makes a difference here? So strictly from a performance standpoint, the main thing we care about is exhaust flow. When your car is pushing out exhaust gases, you want to evacuate those gases as quickly as possible so that you can get as much fresh air back into the engine to burn that up on the intake and compression stroke. So that's something that we are considering when we look at a downpipe design, because it's coming right off of the turbo and you want to get those exhaust gases out. That also helps improve your turbo efficiency and things like that. So it is really critical to make sure that downpipe is as well designed as possible, because it's the first thing your exhaust gases see when they come out of your turbo. So you want to make sure that it flows really quickly. And a big part of that, of course, is making sure that it's big enough. You want it to be big enough so that you don't build up too much back pressure, because that back pressure can damage the turbo. It can make the car run less efficiently, and worst case scenario, you won't make the power that you're rated for. Now in the stock form, the biggest issue here is you've got a big catalytic converter. Of course, the catalytic converter is designed for emissions. So if you haven't looked inside of your catalytic converter, this is what you see. It's basically like kind of a honeycomb shaped design that is a huge filter. It's basically a huge restriction right after the turbo, and exhaust gases are going to slow down and kind of fight to go through all of those holes in order to get out of your exhaust. So it is critical to make sure that the catalytic converter is big enough so you can flow as much exhaust gas as you need without causing a restriction that can damage your turbo or reduce your power, but still have enough filtration to meet the emissions requirement it's trying to reach. So that's why we have such a big section in the middle where the catalytic converter fits. And especially if you guys come from like a more traditionally designed car, the catalytic converter is usually a ways away from the turbo. So you have, a certain size pipe coming off of the turbo, then a section that kind of bubbles out where the catalytic converter is, and then it continues through the rest of the exhaust. But on the B58, it's designed to be right by the turbo so that it can heat up more efficiently and thus give you better emissions performance. So that's why it's built into the downpipe the way that it is, and that's why it gets so big right off of the downpipe. So I think just from a performance standpoint and what the turbo is rated for, definitely doesn't need a 4-inch outlet, but to compensate for the cat being right next to it and making sure that you can adequately get enough exhaust flow through the downpipe, that's why it ends up being so big. And of course, with a hybrid turbo or any other downpipe option, it's going to need to match that so it can mate up to your stock turbo. But another thing that a lot of people don't consider is that you still want the downpipe to be small enough so that you can get exhaust gas speed. You want high velocity for the exhaust gases to get out of the turbo. So if you basically have the turbo come out through a certain size pipe and it bubbles up and gets really big and then comes back down. In that big open section, the exhaust gases are going to slow down. And so in most cases, you really don't want that to happen. Any case where you have a big section that kind of opens up the exhaust gases and makes it slow down could potentially hurt your performance. So the ideal design is, if anything, you want nice smooth bends. If it reduces or increases in design, you want it to be a really gradual taper so that you can see the sides have a minimal impact on how exhaust flows out of your turbo. So that's why a lot of people, myself included, would typically say that if you want the best performance, you're probably good sticking with a 4.5-inch exhaust. Yes, it's not the biggest one available, but it is usually designed to optimally flow everything through the turbo so that you get good exhaust gas speed, you have adequate size to avoid back pressure issues, and it has a nice gradual taper to the design so that everything comes down to the standard 3.1-inch mid-pipe connection. So that includes downpipes like the Bimmer Network one that I have on my car. It is a 4.5-inch downpipe, and it flows great. There are cars making over 700 wheel horsepower with it, so it has an adequate size to avoid back pressure issues or any problems where you can't make power. And of course, it flows your exhaust gases really smoothly due to the design of the downpipe. Now, I will say a 5-inch downpipe does have its own advantages because in my experience, it does sound a lot better. It sounds deeper and it makes the car sound just like it's throatier and beefier, almost like the engine is bigger, because that 5-inch section almost is like an echo chamber. So it just makes the car sound really good. I think a 4.5-inch exhaust sounds a little more raw, a little more like, I guess, a traditional race car, whereas the 5-inch downpipe will give you more of like that beefy, meaty, more of a muscular sound. And I do prefer that personally. I did, again, get that downpipe from Race Ready Performance. I don't think they are actively selling these downpipes anymore, but there are other options out there. Just, again, try to find one if you do go that route that has a nice gradual taper, not one that really bubbles up randomly after coming off of the turbo. Those aren't designed as well, and it's just not really how it should be. I would opt to go with a company that makes a 5-inch downpipe that put in the extra legwork to design it with smooth tapers and really smooth bends so there aren't any abrupt changes in diameter. Now, that being said, that's the downpipe that I'm running on my 340i. The car made 660 wheel horsepower, so again, not really a limitation for most all of us, especially if you're sticking with like stock transmission and stuff like that. You know, you can easily make over 650 wheel with this downpipe. I'm sure even over 700 without an issue. So yes, again, from like an engineering design standpoint, it's not optimal for horsepower, but it works fine in actual practice. Now, there are downpipes out there that are bigger than 5 inches. There are some that are probably even bigger than 6 inches. But pretty much all of them that I've seen include a high flow cat. So those are bigger for the same reason that BMW put a big outlet on the stock turbo, because the downpipe has a catalytic converter. You need to make it bigger to optimize your airflow. And by making it even bigger than the stock downpipe, you can have similar filtration or just slightly less filtration than the stock downpipe, while still giving you a significant amount of increased airflow that supports the performance gains you're looking for. So that's something that if you want to stick with a cat, you'll probably want to look for a 6-inch or bigger downpipe, because usually those are the ones that have a good high flowing catalytic converter. Although I have seen one, this arm downpipe is a 6-inch downpipe, and you can see it basically just has a big bubble in the middle. Again, I'm not a huge fan of that design just from an engineering standpoint. It seems like it's not optimal for airflow, but the exhaust clips that they've posted, it does sound pretty deep. It sounds pretty good, and it's probably not going to be a huge limitation on power if you wanted to go that route. So again, for those of us that like to nitpick every little thing, I would say the 4.5-inch downpipes are the best designed for performance. But if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of that and, you know, focus on a deeper tone, or if you want something that just is a little bit different from everybody else, then the 5-inch or 6-inch bigger catless downpipes will allow you to accomplish that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I mean, again, if I had to do it all over, I would probably just try something different, because as you guys know, I just like doing stuff. I will change things for pretty much any reason, and that's why I like trying different downpipes and turbos and stuff like that. So if there's anything else you guys want to see me try, let me know. I'm Definitely looking for more things to mix up my builds and try new things going into the next year. But for now, I think that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.